That was President Biden speaking about his upcoming meeting with Vladimir Putin. And ahead of the Biden-Putin summit, lots of people making comments on it, including former President Donald Trump, who issued this statement here. He said, "Good luck to Biden dealing with President Putin. Don't fall asleep during the meeting, and please give him my warmest regards." End quote. Joining us now to discuss, Jason Miller, senior advisor to the 45th president, joining us live. Jason, thanks for being here.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. What do you expect from President Biden meeting with President Putin?
Well, this is very concerning. It's exactly as President Trump predicted, that Joe Biden would embarrass us on the world stage. And that's exactly what we've seen so far, whether it be Joe Biden standing there zoning out for 25 seconds, whether it be the other leaders of the G7 walking away and leaving him in the dust. I mean, there are some real concerns about how with it Joe Biden is here. And at a time when we should be pushing against the real threats that are facing not just the U.S., but other democratic allies around the world, the rise of a potentially nuclear Iran, the chaos that Iran is causing with Israel, the fact that China is becoming more and more aggressive, not just in the South China Sea, but in taking over technology all over the world. This administration is worried about climate change and the Green New Deal, and it really shows their priorities are out of whack.
We've also heard from Ukrainian leader Zelensky warning Americans that a war with Russia could, quote, be tomorrow in their houses. What's your reaction to that warning?
This is a great point. We saw during the Obama administration, where Joe Biden was the VP, that Russia went in and took over Crimea, that they completely disrespected the Obama administration, that they weren't concerned at all that Obama or Biden would push back on them. And here's the thing to keep in mind about Russia. Russia, a lot of folks don't realize this, their economy is only about the size of New York State. But their troublemaking, they're the biggest superpower in the world when it comes to troublemaking. And so they constantly do this to keep themselves relevant. And yeah, I think that there's going to be testing of the Biden administration by Russia. But you know what? Let's not forget about China. And I wouldn't be surprised to see China make a move on Taiwan, knowing that Joe Biden is too weak and feeble to do anything about it.
Yeah, you definitely mentioned concerns about China. In the meantime, though, of course, the president answering some questions from the press about Putin. In the meantime, looking ahead to that Russian meeting, here's what he was asked at NATO yesterday. Take a look.
In a weekend interview, Vladimir Putin laughed at the suggestion that you had called him a killer. Is that still your belief, sir, that he is a killer?
Well, look, I mean, he has made clear that the answer is, I believe he has in the past essentially acknowledged that he was there are certain things that he would do or did do.
The president there taking a pause to gather his thoughts there. I see you shaking your head, though.
I think taking a pause to collect his thoughts is probably about the most polite way that you could phrase it. In fact, the White House would be smart to go and try to sign you up to give them talking points on how to answer this. I mean, the fact of the matter is that Joe Biden, his brain is short-circuiting here. He's just not up to the task. And this is very clear. Keep in mind, Joe Biden, his whole value proposition as a candidate over the years has been that he's this foreign policy expert. If he's not ready to go on the national stage now, after having done this for 50 years, he's not going to get any better as we move forward.
Yeah, I think he said he had 120 days in office. Give him some time. As you point out, though, he's had a long political career. I want to talk to you something about the former president, though. You tweeted a little less than an hour ago about this new platform coming in regards to Donald Trump. What can you tell us about this, Jason? Let's make some news.
Well, here's what I can tell you. Last week, we announced that I'm going to be stepping aside from my day-to-day spokesman role with President Trump, and I'm going to be joining a tech startup firm as the CEO, where we're going to have a new social media platform that's going to be coming this summer. I will tell you, it's going to be big, it's going to be faster, better features, it's going to completely knock folks' socks off, it's going to be impressive. Now, this is a separate effort that I'm doing from President Trump. Obviously, would love to get President Trump to the platform, but I'm not going to speak on what President Trump's plans plans are at the moment with regard to social media. I don't want to go and put words in his mouth, but for any conservative who's been worried about the big tech censorship, who's been wondering why they've been losing followers, wondering why people are getting kicked off of Twitter and Facebook simply for stating basic facts, whether it be election fraud or COVID, things have now come to light. Help is on the way. A new, bigger, and better platform is coming, and we're going to make some news pretty shortly here.
So again, this is not directly linked to Donald Trump and his own tech plans. This is something separate?
Correct. President Trump, this is something that there could potentially be something that he ends up joining us with. But I want to let President Trump go and announce his own plans on social media. Those might be something that line up with us. There might be something different. But I'm going to let him do that in his terms so as not to step on his thunder at all. But I can tell you that there will be a very beautiful social media platform coming soon that conservatives and anyone worried about big tech and censorship is going to be happy with.
It sounds like you'd give him an account if he wanted one, Donald Trump.
Oh, I think that's safe to say. I think it's safe to say that real Donald Trump will be set aside for the 45th president and waiting for him to jump on.
All right, Jason Miller joining us live. Jason, thank you.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.